All right, you've read the title of this video already, so we know that you don't know how teams qualify for the Olympics in beach volleyball, and you're not alone. We've gotten a lot of questions about it, so we're here to set it straight and tell you how teams qualify for the Tokyo 2021 Olympics in beach volleyball.
Tell me how to qualify for the Olympics.
Okay, that's a great question. All right, so there's 24 teams per gender. Now remember this, only 2 teams per country are allowed in those 24 teams. One spot goes to the host country, Japan, all right? Next spot that's already been qualified for is the winner of the World Champs tournament back in 2019. It's another spot. Now there's 2 other spots that have already been qualified for, and that was the FIVB Olympic tournament that happened in September of 2019, and those spots are taken. So 4 out of 24 are already qualified for. 4 spots gone, 20 left. Now, the next way teams qualify for the Olympics are through the Olympic Provisional ranking system. What that is it takes a team, every single tournament that a team has played in from September 2018 till June 2021, and they take their top 12 finishes and they add up all those points, and if you're in the top 15, you qualify for the Olympics.
That's it?
That's it. But the caveat is, like I said earlier, if you're paying attention, only 2 teams per country qualify for those 24 spots, right? So hypothetically, or actually speaking, if you have 3 men's team and 4 women's teams that are in the top 15 in Olympic Provisional rankings, at the end of the day, or June 21st, 2021, only 2 teams per country get in. Doesn't matter if they're 7th in the world and 9th in the world. If there's 2 teams ahead of them, they don't get in. If you're good at math and even better at subtraction, you know that there's 5 spots left. Now, what those 5 spots are reserved for is there's 5 continental federations across the globe. You have North America, South America, Africa, Europe, and Asia and Oceania are combined. All right? So what happens with those 5 spots is each of those federations have their own Continental Cup. And it's a playoff, and the winner of those Continental Cups secure those 5 spots. But if your country already has those 2 spots in the other qualification areas, you don't have a chance of qualifying. But it leaves the door open to the other countries that have only 1 team or no teams in the qualification for the Olympics. So, for example, you have Canada and they only have 1 team that's qualified. They would play in the NORCECA Continental Cup against teams as Mexico, Guatemala, all these other teams to try and secure that 1 spot per each continental federation. So now that I've explained how any team can qualify for the Olympics, you might be asking yourself, where do the US teams stand? And I can answer that for you. So on the women's side, Alex Kleiman and April Ross are ranked 2nd in the world and 1st for the US. Then you have Carrie Walsh-Jennings and Brooke Sweat that are tied for 5th in the world and 2nd in the US. Then Kelly Claes and Sarah Sponsel are tied for 7th and 3rd for the US. And then you have Stockman and Kalinsky that are tied for 9th and 4th in the US. So every single tournament matters, and the margin, the difference between these teams are so small that one tournament could change the whole outlook of the leaderboard. On the men's side, the race is just as close, let me tell you. Okay, so we have Taylor Crabb and Jake Gibb that are 8th in the world, 1st for the US. Then you have Tri Bourne and Trevor Crabb that are tied for 11th in the world and 2nd for the US. And then you have Nick Lucena and Phil Delhauser who are tied for 17th and who are 3rd for the US. And you might be wondering, how are Nick and Phil in 17th? And like I said earlier, it's your top 12 finishes. Nick and Phil are the only team that don't have 12 finishes. So this next tournament will fulfill that 12th spot. Like I said, every single tournament might change the order of who's leading for the US to secure those 2 spots. So those are Olympic qualification points, and that's its own ranking system to qualify for the Olympics. But there's another ranking system called entry points, and that determines your seed in the subsequent FIVB beach volleyball tournaments to qualify for the Olympics. And that's a whole nother animal. Wow. How the entry points work and how they differ from the Olympic Provisional ranking system is it takes your top 4 finishes out of your last 6 tournaments. Let me give you an example. So even though Tri Bourne and Trevor Crabb are tied for 11th in the world, the number 2 team for the US, they don't have as many entry points as Nick and Phil do, even though Nick and Phil are the third place team for the US and tied for 17th. Regardless that they're second in the US for Olympic provisional rankings, they aren't in the main draw for this upcoming tournament, right? And so there was 3 other teams that wanted to play in the qualifier for this tournament, and because of that, the US held a country quota that allowed 3 other teams to play in, and unfortunately, like I said, even though Tri and Trevor are second in the US, tied for 7th in the world for the Olympic provisional rankings, they lost in that country quota to another team, and so there's 2 other teams going to Doha to play in this tournament in the qualifier. Not our second best team.
And what do you think about that?
But you know, Tri and Trevor unfortunately lost to Kane and Theo. And you could make the argument that, oh, if they can't beat a USA team here, like they don't deserve to go, and like, oh, their entry points aren't as high, maybe they're on the downslope. But that's just not true. Like, it's even in the Volleyball Mag wrote an article, and Theo Brunner, bless his heart, I love him, says like, yeah, we had no pressure at all. Yeah, they had no pressure. They had nothing to lose. They just went there to play, where Tri and Trevor had everything to lose. You know, I understand USA Volleyball sets the rules and they adhere by those rules. But I know their goal is to win as many medals as possible. And so Nick and Phil are a phenomenal team, and they still need that 12th tournament. But by chance that Nick and Phil don't do well in this tournament, you know, and don't increase by that many points, we run the risk of only having one team qualify for the Olympics. Whereas Tri and Trevor are good right now. They're tied for 7th, where Nick and Phil are tied for 17th. So it's a huge risk that we run. So am I disgruntled? Yes. Was that informational? I think so. I think now you know how complicated it is to qualify for the Olympics. And I hope I brought a little bit more clarity to the crazy process these players go through to qualify for the Olympics. God bless them.